Kate Milifalcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. Welcome to my returning subscribers. I'm very grateful for you sticking around. I really appreciate it. Love the comments. I enjoy the interaction. Thank you to new subscribers. You're welcome here, and I hope that you keep coming back. Stay tuned, because there's always something you just don't know what to expect around here. I don't know what to expect, so it's a thrill. All right. I've been thinking a lot about, well, obviously, about our current situation. Let's just call it that. I'm going to try to stay out of names here. And it brings to mind a book that I recommend on a fairly regular basis. And I never have it handy because it was buried in a pile of political books over there. I remembered and I dug it out. The name of this book is Political Ponerology. Ponerology is the study of evil. Let me just read the back of the blurb. The original manuscript went into the furnace minutes before a secret police raid in communist Poland. The second copy, painfully reassembled by scientists working under impossible conditions of violence and repression, was sent via courier to the Vatican. Its receipt was never acknowledged. The manuscript and all the valuable data were lost. In 1984, a lot going on in that year, the final copy was written from memory by the last survivor of the original researchers, Andrew Lobachevsky, I think is how it's pronounced. And its publication was blocked by Zbigniew Brzezinski, the father of the Morning Joe woman, the blonde woman. 6 degrees, right? Everybody is separated by 6 degrees. This is shocking in its clinically spare descriptions of the true nature of evil. It's poignant in its more literary passages, revealing the immense suffering experienced by the researchers contaminated or destroyed by the disease they were studying. It's a study of the founders and supporters of oppressive political regimes. The approach analyzes the common factors that lead to the propagation of man's inhumanity to man. Morality and humanism cannot long withstand the predations of this evil. This is a warning to us all. Knowledge of its nature and its insidious effect on both individuals and groups is the only antidote. That's just the blurb from the back of the cover. Ponerology, the science of the nature of evil. And this is adjusted for political purposes. So let me tell you what this blurb is really saying. The author had a group of friends. They were university students when World War II broke out, or, lead up to World War II. Most of them were medical students, psychiatric students, psychology students, and they recognized very quickly what was going on, but had no idea what they could do about it. So they got together and they agreed, we're going to keep data. We're going to use this as a long-term study. And we're going to keep data on every person that we encounter who becomes a part of the system, who fights against the system, but they're more concerned about the ones who were all in, who bought into it. And this is about how evil takes hold of people, and how that evolves, or I should say devolves, into the dystopian nightmare scenarios of the past. And it's a warning. And it's a warning from a very scientific, psychological, neuropsychological framework. This is a really difficult book to read. You know, I read a lot of books, and I have a book coming up pretty soon. It's really poorly written, and I'm going to tell you about it later. This book is the kind of book where you read a paragraph and you go, okay, I know I read words. What did they mean? And I go back and read it again, and I'd read it again, and I'd labor my way through half a chapter. And then I'd have to put it down because my head hurt. But I was determined to read this. This is a long time ago I read this. I covered this a very long time ago. And eventually I did manage to get my way through the book, but it was an uphill battle. I think 10 of Wands. So it's intense. It's revelatory. I learned a lot from it. I hope I learned it properly. Now we'll get to the subject of the moment. One of the things that this talks quite a bit about is the harsh reality that ordinary people, the banality of evil, as Hannah Arendt said, ordinary people will succumb to the allure of power. And there are numerous reasons for that. And we have seen it in absolutely stunning display of late. I'm going to try to stay away from names. I don't think I need to be too explicit. I suggest you watch the last season of South Park. So this brought to mind a word that I love. You know, I'm into words, and I like this word. I don't know why. I just like this word, sycophant. And so I thought it kind of sent me down a path, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's just get to my notes. I know a lot of people who are experts in the field make videos, and it just comes right out of them because it's all stored in their brains, and they, you know, because they're so well informed and it's their field. A lot of what I look up, and I'm learning about, and I'm sharing what I've learned with you. But it's not been integrated into my synapses yet. So I have to refer to my notes. So I hope that's okay. Sycophants. Let's do a little exploration of what it means. What is a sycophant? So the word has fascinating origin from the Greek. It comes from the word for fig. It means fig shower. So what, you ask? What on earth does that mean? Okay, there's a history behind it. Words that have a history behind them are fascinating because if you think about it, how it evolves into our usage, it's really interesting. So fig showers during the ancient time of ancient Greece, these were people who exposed illegal fig smugglers in ancient Athens. So it was against the law to smuggle figs. They were a huge commodity. And people did it because they were, you know, wanting to get rich. And some people ratted on them. It happened enough that there's a term. They would accuse people of stealing the fruit. And often they were lying. They were acting as false informants. And they were doing it to gain favor. So fig showers may or may not have been telling the truth, but enough of them lied and used this excuse to put the focus of the law against people they didn't like, people they wanted their position, whatever. They did it to gain favor with people in charge. And it has evolved to mean a servile flatterer who prizes the false virtues of whatever to gain advantage. They want to be sucking up to the influential to gain advantage. So the real definition of sycophant is not fig shower, it's suck up. Sycophants are flatterers. They're fawners. Think Eddie Haskell. They're yes men. They prioritize self-interest over the truth. They feed the leader's vanity. Put a little star by this, so this next part. They distort feedback. They lie to the leader in what's called an echo chamber effect. So think of a leader who's isolated by virtue of his position, because it's always a he, right? By virtue of his position, and the people around him are reinforcing the lies, and it becomes an echo chamber. And so the leader is believing the lies, and it's the sycophants are making it worse and worse. They tell the leader what he wants to hear. They reinforce what's called the warm blanket of praise. Now, why? We're going to talk a little bit about this. They're covering their own insecurities, and what happens is they're feeding and reinforcing these untruths, and it leads to bad decisions on the part of the leader. They will withhold bad news, like, I don't know, poll numbers, and they'll exaggerate the achievements of the leader or decisions that have been made to manipulate the leader. Sycophants are dangerous because they isolate the leader from the reality of the world, and they increase a false sense of invincibility. So if you have a leader who is a malignant narcissist, they suffer from grandiosity. I am the best. They do feel unconquerable. Sol invictus, the Roman god, the sun unconquered. I'm telling you. Go back and watch my video about the Domus Aurea, Nero's golden house. Sycophants break down the morale of the competent people around them. So they're doing damage in both directions. They're holding up a false narrative, and they're creating an environment that undermines people who are trying to do the right thing. Sycophancy stifles critical thinking. They set aside their brains. They become conformists, yes men. They limit creative solutions. They foster mediocrity. Leaders are surrounded by sycophants, and it makes them more vulnerable. Another term for it would be bootlicking toadies. Sycophancy intensifies other vices. It combines with hypocrisy, lying, manipulation. It is a form of manipulation. Fraud. It's just this closed circle of, I don't know, the 7 deadly sins. So I have an interesting little retrospective here of historic bootlickers. So, you know, the one that I think would jump most into mind immediately right now, subject of conversation and comparison, is Joseph Goebbels, the Hitler's minister of propaganda. He was the one in charge of all the false narratives about the Jews. He was the one who created a media atmosphere of disinformation and hate. He began this persistent program of flattering Hitler. He is the one responsible for developing the Heil Hitler salute. He insisted on calling Hitler Der Führer. He turned groveling praise into an art form. I think we've seen something like that. He spoke, he spoke of this thing that he imagined, the glorious triumphs of Hitler against his adversaries, in which Hitler was like a crusader or a superhero, larger than life and unshakable. He would just stand firm and devastate all of his opponents. That's Goebbels. I'm not going to talk about the Roman individual who is nameless, but the scenario is great. There was this guy who swore that he would give his life if Caligula survived this illness that Caligula was suffering at the time. The guy is nameless, at least for our purposes. And this guy was betting and lost. Caligula survived. And the guy thought that, well, Caligula will be so grateful for my deep loyalty to say something like that, and he'll reward me for it. But we're talking Caligula here. Caligula took him at his word. This is performative sadism, which is a malignant, narcissistic, psychopathic sign. Caligula recovered, and he had the guy executed. Well, you said you'd give your life if I got better. I'm better. And I have a little Latin saying here that might sound a little altered, but somewhat familiar. Sic semper sycophantes. Thus always to sycophants. Then we have one of my all-time favorite people to loathe, Henry Kissinger. There are numerous reasons to dislike this guy, not the least of which he was also a sycophant, always a sycophant. And you know, he was intelligent, and they're the scariest kind because it's calculated. It's not coming from a place of fear. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. So in Harvard, he was a Harvard student. His friends said, so his name was Henry A. Kissinger. And his friends used to say that what it really spelled was Henry A. S.S. Kissinger. So from the beginning, he was a world-class Nixonian sycophant. He even excused USR's persecution of Jews that was going on as really not Nixon's problem, really not a problem for the United States. I was going to look this up, but wasn't he Jewish? Maybe not, but he was German. Then we have a famous sycophant in the world of sycophants, maybe not in the larger zeitgeist. His name was the Duke of Vendôme. This Duke began, okay, this is not singular to him. This was how people rolled during the time of the Sun King, you know, the time of the fading of the French royalty, what's her name? Marie Antoinette, who wasn't as awful as people said. She was bad. But there are modern day people who make her look like she smells like a rose. But that's another video. Okay. The Duc Vendôme began every morning on his chaise percée. This is a portable toilet, a porta potty in the main room. So he would sit there and he would hold court. And he'd be doing his official business and his other business at the same time. And he would sit there for hours. That's the other thing. So there was a guy called Giulio Alberoni, and he had risen from poverty. And this is a kind of sycophant, always with the insecurity of his original upbringing. And he hoped for more, grasping for more power. And there had been a moment another day, when the Duke had gotten up and wiped himself in front of everybody, and one guy said, "Oh, how disgusting," and he lost his official position. This guy, Giulio Alberoni, watched that moment and said, "Oh, culo d'angelo," which loosely translated means, "Oh, the ass of an angel," and went to literally kiss the Duke. He had a long and illustrious career after that. Okay, then one of my favorite characters in literature, and one of Dickens' best was Uriah Heep from the book David Copperfield. Uriah's whole demeanor, appearance, his description of his appearance, everything he said, it was as the absurdity of exaggerated deference. So he was this sneaky clerk who kisses up to his lawyer boss, but it's all fake. He's faking humility. He abases himself. He's trying to manipulate to get information. He manipulates clients and business partners. And what his whole goal in life is to improve his position and standing in his job. And I mention him not because I have anything really remarkable in the way of a story. You know, Dickens did a good enough job. I don't need to try to outdo Dickens, but just such a great character. And if you're curious, dig out a copy of David Copperfield and look up Uriah Heep. It's a riot. Then there's this guy, another great Victorian novelist, Anthony Trollope, wrote a book called Barchester Towers, and there was a chaplain in this book called Obadiah Slope. And he was the fawning kind of sycophant. He fawned all over anyone who was powerful. But typical of a lot of sycophants, and I recommend that you look no farther than our own situation, and you will see the ones that to power and kick. So they kiss up and they kick down. They're tyrannical to their subordinates. He was described in the book as an abominable, horrid, hypocritical man, the most fulsome, fawning, abominable man I ever saw. He was a weaselly hypocrite. Then, so because this is a subject of a lot of attention at the moment, there's a sequel being made to the movie. The book came out ages ago, The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. This woman, who's the boss, is a tyrannical, abusive editor, Miranda Priestley. And she's surrounded by suck-ups who grovel constantly, and they're at each other to try to scramble up the pile. And then, of course, Shakespeare, because always Shakespeare. In Othello, the character of Iago, he engages in flattery, and he does it to conceal betrayal, which you always have to be careful of the sycophant, the rose in one hand and the sword behind his back, to be very careful. He corrupts the mind of Othello by manipulative sycophancy. So what drives the sycophant? Different ones need are moved by different drivers. So some need external validation. They're very insecure. They have a fragile self-structure. They are always feeling the need to prove themselves. So insecurity and a lack of a sense of self is one thing. Another is hardened cynics, and we have seen there is still one active, tries to keep low profile, believes a golem today, who is vicious and quietly manipulates, and it's hard and cynical and sadistic. So there are three types of ingratiating behavior that you'll see with the sycophant. I'm telling everybody this because if you look through this lens at what's going on, I think it gives clarity to some of the motivations. So there's the classic suck-up who is doing what he does to enhance the other, the boss. Then there's the yes man who exercises what's called opinion conformity. Oh, yes, sir. You're so smart, sir. Oh, nobody else would ever have thought that. And then the self-promoter. This is about self-presentation. Always trying to give himself or herself this image of being worth the attention of the boss. So there's three types of sycophants. I kind of mentioned this already, but let's look at it a little more closely. There's the devoted one. This is the one who is all in. really believes this stuff, would deny that any of it was fake. Any of his behavior was fake towards the leader, because they believe in the superiority of the leader. It's a dogged support. And they perform in the theater of devotion. I love that phrase. Then you have the fearful ones. These are the really insecure ones. They're cowardly and they comply because they're afraid. And then we have the silent ones. They keep their head down. And remember that this is reflective of the book Political Ponerology. I did not get this information directly from the book. I did some research in different psychology websites, papers, studies. One of them was from Dublin College. But you see that when you look at World War II and you look at the structure of the Nazi government, and you extend it into local officials, a lot of them kept their heads down. These are the sycophants who are silent. They go along to get along, but they keep in their official position because they get comfort from proximity to power. They're really not loyal to power. Now, there are several kinds of sycophants that are that way. They're ones that are afraid, but stay in relationship to power to elevate themselves, hopefully the crumbs from the rich man's table, And they're the ones that are hard and cynical, who don't really have loyalty to anybody but themselves. They crave power, and they'll shift allegiances. They're shapeshifters. They'll abandon the leader when his power flags. So the leader, what are we talking about? We're talking about a narcissist. Narcissus was the guy who looked in the pool and fell in love with his own reflection. This is the kind of person who prefers flattery, not feedback. Feedback that's not flattering pisses him off, and he'll lash out. He punishes dissent. He wants to be confirmed by those around him. Full of overconfidence, grandiosity. As his power increases, his self-deception increases. And they've done studies, and they say that when you find somebody who is this type of person in a role of leadership, as they get more powerful, they're 2%. And they just become blind to reality. They lose touch with reality. They also don't trust anybody. So this particular bit of information does come from Dublin City University from October of 2024. Dictators rely on sycophants to survive politically, to control the population, to implement their policies, and to ensure increased voter turnout. And this is the only reason that they put up with them. They like the praise. They like the reinforcement of what they've done. They like hearing how great they are and how smart their decisions and how everything is going really well. But pragmatically, they need sycophants to do the dirty work so that they can put a distance between themselves and the dirty work. Their supporters might not be really supportive. They might play the sycophant card pragmatically. And as we said, as the power decreases in the leader, they'll cut their ties. They'll cut their losses. The more precarious their personal position of a sycophant, the more sycophantic they become. I think this is really important. I put exclamation points all around this. As they see a sycophant, think of somebody in a position of support to a narcissistic leader. We have seen this unfold twice in the past 6 months. As that person, the sycophant, is starting to lose power, we don't see it. It's behind the scenes. Discussions are held, fights are had. they come out even more strongly as their power and their decreases, as their insecurity increases about their personal position. Their ass kissing grows exponentially. They overplay the Sycophant card. So far, we've seen it really flagrantly lately, twice. Watch South Park. Sycophants are driven by chronic insecurity, by an intense need for approval, or by the cynicism of a psychopath. It just depends. There's different types. We witnessed a recent master class, and I don't want to say names, but let's just say a recent high-positioned person, no longer there, who created, took it to a whole other level of sycophancy. Gave a careful, measured, calculated performance. It was affirming and validating and flattering and total BS. And as this person's position became more and more shaky, this person got more extreme in the sycophancy because it's a survival strategy. And you survive by attaching yourself to the person of power. So we recognize what's going on. You know the moment I'm talking about. And these people, they try to look dignified in their support of the leader, but they're practicing submission. And it's really obvious if you know what to look for, you watch it. It's embarrassing. You feel embarrassed for them. It's ludicrous on one level because every word out of their mouth is a lie and fake, and it's a phony obsequiousness. But it's ludicrous. It's performative submission. They speak in elevated tones, but they display psychological kneeling. And we feel the cognitive dissonance. You can feel it. You hear one thing, but you see the other thing. Our brains see it, even if it's subliminal. We recognize the obsequiousness of it, whether we realize it or not. It's theater of self-abasement, couched as high praise. So the gold standard is the gold standard of being a sycophant. This is the real art form. It's psychological attunement. And what that means is the ability to discern what the ruler wants before the ruler can articulate it. So it appears that you anticipate his every desire, and that's really affirming for a narcissist. So as the two people who are no longer in positions, whose names I'd prefer not to say, as they found, proximity to unpredictable authority is precarious because a narcissist is unpredictable. Even the most capable servant of power is expendable. They found that out. In the fairly recent past, Beria, B-E-R-I-A, he was the head of Stalin's state secret police. He was eventually arrested and executed. Goebbels chose death at his own hands because once his leader was out of the picture, the whole thing crumbled. Most of the Nazi leadership did not outlive the system, and that's really true of sycophancy. Once that object or system, ideology, whatever, once that crumbles, they have nothing. They rarely outlive the power they serve. The qualities that help them rise cause them to fall. The power leader or the structure falls, they're left standing and they're the targets of blame. They're sacrificed or they're discarded by the leader before he's gone. Because this is the kind of power that is unpredictable. It's unstable. So those who get too close to the flame, they risk being burned. Some are drawn to the flame by their own narcissistic proximity. They want borrowed significance, want to bask in the glory of power, in the glow of the flame, and hope that some of it will shine on them. They identify with the power source. They hope to become the flame eventually. Or they fear the darkness, and their insecurity draws them close to the danger. The narcissist. The sycophant will justify, they'll justify the actions of the leader. They'll justify the decisions of the power, that they're correct and smart and brilliant and unique and necessary. The sycophant elevates them to preempt criticism. They'll use this aggressive kind of defensiveness that we saw on display recently in support of the leader, and that the leader is right, the leader is misunderstood, the leader is the greatest ever, thank you so much, Mr. Leader. Their loyalty is exaggerated. Their support is visible, intense. They have to display this emotion. It's theater. So the sincerity of the sycophant is in his public, enthusiastic, and frequent pursing of the lips. So I just thought that that was helpful. A little psychological background, a little psychological understanding of some psychopathy, psychopathology. Not all of them are psychopaths, but psychopathology is not healthy behavior. Motivations are unhealthy, coming from a place of unwellness. And if you want a challenge that's very rewarding, I would suggest this book, Political Ponerology by Andrew Lobachevsky. There's his name. Put the video on pause and copy it. It's impossible to pronounce and spell. So I hope you found that interesting. Let me know what you think. And stay away from names. Let's not make ourselves too vulnerable to anything. If it applies, if the shoe fits. Thanks so much, Slongafoil. Slancha.